I heard my name called across the auditorium. Maya Rodriguez, Bachelor of Science, Biochemistry, Summa cum laude. 4 years of 3 a.m. lab sessions, research that made my eyes blur, a thesis that had been cited in 3 published papers. I walked across that stage knowing I'd earned every single step. My family sat 12 rows back. As I accepted my diploma, turned toward the crowd, I heard my father's voice cut through the applause like a blade. "Well, at least your sister earned her degree without handouts." The words carried. People turned. My hand tightened on the diploma that suddenly felt like evidence I'd have to defend. But then, from the faculty section, Dr. James Morrison stood up, my thesis advisor, the department chair, the man who'd written my recommendation letters in language usually reserved for future Nobel laureates. "Excuse me," his voice projected across the auditorium with the authority of 30 years in academia, "but I need to correct a factual inaccuracy I just heard." What happened in the next 6 minutes didn't just vindicate 4 years of work, it redrew every family narrative my father had spent my entire life writing. Before I tell you how a graduation became a reckoning, and a professor became the parent my father never was, hit like and tell me, have you ever had your achievements dismissed by family, only to have someone who actually knew your work step in to defend you? Because that day, I learned that the people who witness your effort see value that blood relatives sometimes refuse to acknowledge. They say family is your biggest cheerleader, but sometimes your biggest advocate is the professor who graded every one of your papers. My name is Maya Rodriguez. I'm 22, and I've spent my entire life being compared to a sister who, according to my father, does everything better, easier, and more deservingly. I grew up in San Diego, the younger daughter of Miguel and Carmen Rodriguez. My father runs a successful construction company. My mother teaches middle school. They're hardworking, proud, traditional, and they've had 2 very different daughters. My sister Isabella is 26. She's beautiful, social, married to a lawyer, working in pharmaceutical sales. She graduated from San Diego State 4 years ago, with a degree in communications and a 3.2 GPA. She's my father's pride, the daughter he brags about at family gatherings, the one whose accomplishments get framed and hung in the living room. I'm the other one, the quiet one, the too serious one. The one who chose science over socializing, research over relationships, academic conferences over family parties. When I got into UC Berkeley's biochemistry program, my father said, "That's nice, Mija, but don't expect us to pay for you to play scientist." So I didn't. I got scholarships, a full ride from the Goldwater Scholarship, research grants, a fellowship that covered my living expenses. I worked as a teaching assistant, spent summers doing research instead of coming home, published my work in undergraduate research journals. Every achievement was met with the same response. "That's good, but Isabella did it without having to try so hard." When I made Dean's List, Isabella didn't need awards to prove she was smart. When I got into a competitive research program, Isabella got a real job right after graduation. When my thesis was selected for publication, "That's nice, but when are you going to find a husband like your sister did?" My mother tried to balance it, quietly proud but never contradicting my father. Isabella genuinely didn't understand why I was upset. "Dad's just being dad," she'd say, oblivious to the fact that his being dad meant I was always the asterisk to her accomplishment. Dr. Morrison had been different. From my first-class freshman year, he'd treated my questions like they mattered, my ideas like they had value. When I'd asked to join his research lab sophomore year, he'd said yes immediately. "You have the kind of mind this field needs," he'd told me. "Don't let anyone convince you otherwise." I'd never told him about my father. Never explained why I stayed on campus every holiday, why I flinched when he praised my work, why I looked surprised every time he called my research exceptional. He'd probably wondered. He was about to find out. Graduation day started early, cap and gown pickup at 7 a.m., lining up by major at 8:30, the ceremony beginning at 10. The Berkeley Greek Theater filled with thousands of graduates and their families, the May sun bright and warm on ancient stone seating. My family arrived late. I saw them settle into their seats, just as the provost began opening remarks. My father in his business casual, my mother in a dress she'd probably stressed over for weeks, Isabella in something fashionable and effortless. They hadn't come to my thesis defense, hadn't attended the undergraduate research symposium where I'd won best presentation, hadn't visited campus once in 4 years, except for move-in day freshman year, but they'd come to graduation. "Of course we're coming," my mother had said when I'd asked. "You're graduating." The ceremony moved through its rituals. Speeches from deans, from student representatives, from a tech CEO who'd donated enough to get speaking privileges. Then the graduates, called alphabetically by college, then by major within each college. Chemistry went first, then my college, the College of Letters and Science, then biochemistry. I waited in my seat, hands folded over the honors cords around my neck, gold for summa cum laude, purple for phi beta kappa, the red one for undergraduate research excellence, each one a small proof that I'd done more than survive here. I'd excelled. Maya Rodriguez, Bachelor of Science, Biochemistry, summa cum laude. I stood, walked the stairs to the stage, each step feeling surreal, shook the dean's hand, accepted the diploma folder, turned to face the crowd, the sea of families and graduates and faculty, and heard my father's voice, loud enough to reach the stage. Well, at least your sister earned her degree without handouts. The words landed like stones in still water, ripples of silence spreading outward, as people processed what they'd heard. The dean's smile froze. The student behind me stopped climbing the stairs. I stood there, diploma in hand, face burning. 4 years of work reduced to handouts in front of everyone who mattered. Scholarships weren't handouts, research grants weren't charity. I'd competed for every dollar, proved myself worthy of every opportunity. But explaining that now, from a stage, in front of thousands, that's when Dr. Morrison stood up. He was seated in the faculty section, stage left, in his full academic regalia, doctoral robes, hood showing his Princeton PhD colors, the medals that came with being a department chair. When he stood, 3 other faculty members in our department stood with him. Excuse me, his voice carried with the practiced projection of someone who'd lectured to auditoriums for decades. I need to correct a factual inaccuracy I just heard. The dean stepped back, uncertain. The student behind me fully stopped. Every eye in the Greek theater turned toward Dr. Morrison. I'm Dr. James Morrison, Chair of Molecular and Cell Biology, he continued, his tone calm but unmistakably firm. And I need to clarify something about Miss Rodriguez's degree. He looked directly at my family's section, though I don't know if he could actually see them from that distance. It didn't matter. Everyone knew who he was addressing. Maya Rodriguez didn't receive handouts. She received merit-based scholarships awarded to less than 1% of applicants nationwide. She competed against thousands of students, and won based purely on academic excellence and research potential. Dr. Morrison pulled reading glasses from his pocket, then a folded paper. He'd come prepared. Or maybe he just carried my achievements around because he was proud. Either way, he started reading. In her 4 years here, Miss Rodriguez maintained a 3.97 GPA while working 20 hours a week as a teaching assistant. She authored or co-authored 4 published research papers, more than most graduate students. Her senior thesis on protein folding mechanisms has already been cited in 3 peer-reviewed journals and will be published in Nature Communications next month. The silence was absolute now. Even the graduating students had stopped fidgeting. She was awarded the Goldwater Scholarship, the most prestigious undergraduate scholarship in STEM, based on merit alone. She received the university's Chancellor's Research Fellowship, competing against every undergraduate across every discipline. She won our department's Outstanding Senior Thesis Award unanimously. He paused, lowered the paper, looked directly at me standing frozen on stage. In 30 years of teaching, I've supervised over 200 undergraduate researchers. Maya Rodriguez is in the top 5 of the most brilliant, hard-working, dedicated students I've ever had the privilege to mentor. His voice softened slightly. Her degree wasn't a handout. It was earned with more rigor, dedication, and excellence than most people achieve in their entire academic careers. He looked back toward my family's section. So whoever suggested otherwise was either profoundly misinformed or intentionally diminishing an extraordinary achievement. Either way, they're wrong, and everyone here should know that. He sat down. The 3 professors who'd stood with him remained standing for another beat, a silent solidarity, then slowly took their seats. The applause started small. A few faculty members, some students near me who understood what had just happened. Then it grew. Within seconds, it was thunderous, the entire Greek theater standing, applauding not just for me but for the act of being defended, of being seen. I couldn't move, couldn't process it. The dean gently touched my elbow, guiding me off the stage, because apparently my legs had forgotten how to work. The rest of the ceremony passed in a blur. I sat in my seat, diploma clutched in shaking hands, replaying Dr. Morrison's words. 4 published papers, top 5 students in 30 years, extraordinary achievement. Things my father had never asked about. Accomplishments I'd never been invited to share at family dinners. When the ceremony ended, the crowd dispersed into chaos. Graduates finding families, photos on the lawn, tears and laughter and relief. I stayed in my seat longer than necessary, watching people celebrate. My family found me eventually. My mother's eyes were red. Isabella looked uncomfortable. My father's face was unreadable. Maya, my mother started, her voice careful. Not here. I stood gathering my things. I have to find my advisor. Your professor was out of line, my father began. No. The word came out harder than I'd ever spoken to him. He wasn't. You were, in front of everyone, and he corrected you, with facts. I didn't mean. Yes, you did. You've meant it my whole life. I looked at Isabella. You got a communications degree with a 3.2 GPA. That's good. That's worth celebrating. But I got a biochemistry degree with a 3.97, published 4 papers, and won scholarships you have to be in the top 1% to even qualify for. And you've never once acknowledged it. We're here, aren't we? My father's voice rose defensively. You're here. You showed up. That's the bare minimum. But showing up while actively diminishing what I've accomplished, that's worse than not coming at all. I saw Dr. Morrison approaching through the crowd, along with several of my lab mates. My chosen family, the people who'd actually witnessed my work. I have to go, I told my parents. My research team is taking me to dinner. You're not invited. Dr. Morrison took me and 8 other lab members to a restaurant in Berkeley he'd been taking graduating students to for 20 years. He ordered champagne, toasted the brightest future scientists in the country, and told embarrassing lab stories that made me laugh until my face hurt. Did you plan that? I asked him during dessert. The speech at graduation? I saw your family's names in the guest registry, he admitted. You'd mentioned once, freshman year, that your father didn't understand why you'd chosen science, and the way you said it, he shrugged. He shrugged. I've been a professor long enough to recognize when a brilliant student doesn't have support at home. I brought your CV to the ceremony just in case my father publicly humiliated me, just in case anyone needed a reminder of what you've actually accomplished. He smiled. The public humiliation part was unfortunate, but I wasn't going to let it stand uncorrected. Thank you, I said, meaning it for more than just today. You don't thank someone for stating facts, Maya. Everything I said was true. You earned every single achievement on your own merit. He raised his glass. And you're going to do extraordinary things, with or without your family's acknowledgement. I started my PhD program at Stanford in the fall. Full fellowship, stipend, research position in a lab doing cutting-edge work on cellular mechanisms. My paper came out in Nature Communications in July. Dr. Morrison sent me a screenshot of the first citation it received. My parents called twice after graduation, once to say I'd embarrassed them, once to invite me to Isabella's baby shower. I didn't go to the shower, sent a gift, kept my distance. My mother texts occasionally, pictures of family gatherings I'm not at. Questions about my research that are clearly her trying to understand, even if my father isn't. Isabel called once, 3 months in. Dad keeps asking when you're coming home. I am home, I'd told her. This is home. The lab, my research, people who value what I do, that's home. He just doesn't know how to show it. No, he's uncomfortable that someone else publicly valued me more than he ever has. That's not the same as being proud. If this story resonated, drop a comment. Where are you listening from, and have you ever had a professor, teacher, or mentor defend your achievements when family wouldn't? This is Calm Verdict Stories. I'm Maya. And this is what happens when the people who actually know your work refuse to let it be diminished. To every student whose family doesn't understand their field, their achievements, their path, find your Dr. Morrison. Find the people who see your work and understand its value. They're your real family.